So good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks for being here this is OMG panel number 8. So we've been at this, we started OMG last June. So if this is your first panel discussion, welcome. Our mission is to, inspire learning and collaboration in the OMS domain. This is non-sales. We don't pitch any product here. It's just about learning. So thanks to our early members that have been with us for a long time. I see some of you, I see Darko, I see you out there. Thank you for being here. And if you're, like I said, if you're a new joiner, I hope that you get something out of this morning. And what I would ask all of you to do today is if you like the conversation, please invite someone that's not in OMG into the OMG network. So if you could just take one person in your network and invite them into OMG, that's what helps us grow. So we're at 1,350 members now. We have almost 150 people that registered for the event this morning, which is awesome. So if all of you could invite another connection, we're gonna bring another 150 people into the group. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. All right. Before we get to our panelists, OMG is going physical. What do I mean by that? So we are contemplating having an actual in-person event in the New York City area sometime in the month of June. And they would probably have a panel type discussion. It would be an end of day event in the New York City area. I can't, Ron, help me again with it's a Flatiron Golf venue at New York City
Yes,
Grand Central.
Flatiron Golf right next to Grand Central Station.
Yep. So that's going to be the venue. And we just wanted to gauge some interest to see if people would be, obviously, if you don't live in New York, we don't expect you to get on an airplane to go to an OMG event. So it's going to be a subset of you. But if we're going to launch a poll now, and if you could just let us know if it would be interested, that would just give us a good sense from a planning perspective if we can pull something like this off. So go ahead and launch the poll. June 6th is the actual date that we are considering. All right.
Yes, I see 38 responses so far. 40.
Okay. Okay. All right. Why don't you close the poll?
Okay.
Okay. 14% was yes, 28% maybe. Okay. That's pretty good numbers. Well, good. Well, thank you. More to come on that. As we get closer, we'll figure out if we have enough interest to pull something like that off. So thank you very much. All right, without further ado, we're going to get to our panel. And we like to keep these things organic, so I will try and get audience questions interspersed throughout this dialogue as we go. And before we get going with the panel, let's introduce our panelists. We have 3 great OMS product managers with us here today. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we will get into it. So Katie, why don't you go first?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Brown. I'm a director of product management at Foot Locker, supporting all things order management through post-purchase, including our supply chain. I've only been at Foot Locker a few months, but I spent 11 years at Gap in a similar space prior to joining.
All right, awesome. Div, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Divyangna Singh. You can call me Div. I am at BJ's Wholesale Club. I'm Director of Product Management over core capabilities, which includes all of the integration-heavy products that live under our e-com systems. And I've also been there about 6 months now, and prior to that, I was at Gap. So hi, Katie. Nice to see you here. And I was in a similar space at Chap as well.
All right. And BJ, I know you are former group product manager at Dick's Sporting Goods. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yep, thank you, Chap. Yep, as you mentioned, in career transition, currently searching for a next opportunity. Was group product manager at Dick's Sporting Goods over fulfillment and their inventory accuracy initiative. And prior to that, I was with Kroger for about 8 years, where I led the startup of their click and collect and e-com business and managed both the front end website product teams as well as the order management and fulfillment. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, BJ. Awesome. All right. I don't know about you guys, but just hearing that intro was exciting enough. Like, wow, do we have some years of experience on this call? So this is going to be awesome. All right, audience questions. So if you have a question that you want to ask these guys, please drop it in the chat, and we will try and get to it throughout the panel. Can't promise that we'll address all the questions, but if you do have one, feel free to drop it in the chat. They will get to me, and we'll try to intersperse them. All right. So with that, let's get into the panel. All right. The first question we're going to start with is for BJ. And this is an extension, so our last panel was build versus buy. And the question is deciding where to invest. And so extension off of build versus buy as a product manager, where to invest in custom greenfield applications, where to invest SaaS solutions. What, if any, is the role of the OMS product manager in that build versus buy decision?
Yeah, so I think the thing that is super important to make sure you start with is a very crisp and clear product strategy. If you have a clear understanding of the business value from the investment that you're trying to create, the product outcomes and objectives that you have, an understanding of maybe what you have today and what you're trying to solve, what problems you're trying to solve for, that's obviously an important step in making the decision. And then partnering with your stakeholders in the organization to ensure that you have a clear conversation going with them. They're part of that product strategy build. They're signing off on it. They're aligned to the outcome. I think is a really good step to take early in the process. That way, when you start that actual build or buy an installation of whatever you choose to do, they have a better understanding of what is going to happen or what outcomes are you're measuring for that investment. And then once you get to that state where you have that alignment from that product strategy and the outcomes and results you're trying to drive from the investment you're making, it's good to work with, obviously, architecture, engineering, design, to start to have them put their signature and their input on that product strategy. And that way, in those discussions, you can begin having some thought around, well, how will we architect this solution? What makes sense from our legacy systems, what we have today, and where we want to go. So I think that's how I get started in the process, and ensure you have the right setup and at least get your direction going of where you want to go, what it is you want to build, what it is you want to leverage that may already be on the market that could just get you there faster.
Yeah. Okay. Katie, Div, any perspectives on that question from you guys?
I think BJ answered it perfectly, but I would add to that is the clear use cases on what is the problem you're trying to solve for, and then the maturity of products in the market is kind of, will go hand in hand with everything that BJ outlined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally agree. And I think the maturity of your business partners as well, right? If you've got a business team that really understands what their strategy is, building yourself can sometimes be a little bit easier. If you have business partners that don't necessarily have as much of a thought process built out around their strategy, having something external that can kind of help drive them in the right direction is helpful.
Great. Okay. This next question I know is going to resonate with a lot of people, which in the OMS space, it always seems like you are balancing external requests with internal requests all the time. So Katie, this question is for you. What advice do you have to people to balance your own product strategy versus all the other requests that are going to come in, which are typically enablers for someone else's strategy, and just, sometimes get in the way of what you want to do? What advice do you have for folks on that topic?
Yeah, I think that this one is always tough, because generally speaking, if you have a team that's passionate about the space, they have their own ideas and they want to make sure that their thoughts are heard. And so I think there's a couple ways to do that. One is always pushing to try to have some level of evergreen funding for your space that allows your team to be creative and build into, the spaces that are important to the team. I think the other part of that is getting in front of your business partners and making sure that your team's voice is heard as they're setting their overall business priorities and strategies. And sometimes I think that it can be tough because the OMS world can fall into the background of that. But as a product manager who has those relationships built on the business side, making sure that you're bringing your team's ideas forward early in the process as you're doing, whether it's your yearly planning or your quarterly planning, to try to make sure that you can help articulate for your team what's important to them and how you think it can drive value to the business. And I think that partnership can often help get those ideas further along than trying to do them in the background by yourself. So getting that sponsorship from the business.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Good, great advice. Div, BJ, any feedback on that one?
Just one thought or add is around the tech stack you might be migrating from and what you aim to go toward. I've been having lots of conversations around, moving more towards a REST API architecture with some companies away from legacy tech stacks that are monolithic and really massive. And it's important in those conversations that Kate was talking about to help translate that benefit or that value that you're bringing to the business. It allows you for flexibility and partnerships and third-party fulfillment and things like that with legacy tech stacks, from the traditional OMS systems of the world, we're not impossible, but a little bit more difficult.
Right. So are you saying, BJ, that the product manager's role, in addition to delivering against the fulfillment outcomes for the organization, is also to ensure that the tech strategy behind that is an enabler itself? And you just gave an example, but do you view that as, some people would view that as, no, that's the architect's role or the senior or the engineering lead's role. But it sounds like you feel like the product manager should own part of that as well.
I think it's the team's responsibility for the product to build that, or maybe market the product that way to the business, to show them that, hey, what if someday you come back to us and you decide that you're going to launch or sign this deal with an Instacart and you want to do fulfillment with Instacart from your stores? We're going to be able to build or enable that capability very quickly through the architecture. And so oftentimes in conversations with business partners, and they don't quite or don't need to understand that level of detail around architecture, but if you can translate into the business value it could bring in the future, that's a big bonus.
Yeah. Okay. Div, any perspectives on that one?
No, I think I'm totally aligned with both of you. I think one of the key skills that a product manager would have to have in this scenario is the ability to tie those business priorities to your products. So really understanding what the algorithm does, what are like little opportunities that you can get to either have quick wins or a longer term strategy from a tech perspective, and being super data driven will really help aid some of this.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Next question is for you, Div. With all of the OMS fulfillment data moving kind of up into the shopping funnel, we're starting to really blend, front-end shopping experiences with back-end inventory and fulfillment data. how are you seeing product teams organize around this particular problem? You know, which product team, is it the ecom team? Is it the OMS product team? Which one of these teams kind of owns those decision rights when we're now talking about OMS data in the front end shopping experience?
I love this question because those lines are super blurry in e-commerce. And that's one of the things that I think very successful organizations do well, because it's through collaboration. I don't see it as one team owning it. I think you come up with a strategy and a priority more on a higher level, and then work together, both e-com and fulfillment, to try and figure out what are those right roadmap items and features that should be worked on together. And I think there's shared accountability there between e-com and fulfillment to bring in fulfillment data to have a better customer experience. And both product managers have to understand each part of the system. So it's definitely a collaborative thing.
And so what would be an idea to get that kind of collaboration? If there's people on the call right now who are kind of rolling their eyes right now going, yeah, the front end team always wins, and I'm just, kind of in the background. What advice would you have for them?
I think really understanding the e-com funnel and what the customer experience looks like, understanding where certain data can be used for your advantage or disadvantage. So very tactically, something like inventory positions, you might want real-time accurate inventory on the site, but it may not make sense based on the fact that maybe something is selling through really quickly. So who owns that threshold? Just having clear guidelines around some of those concepts that touch the customer directly, and then being able to come up with a shared sort of outcome or OKR, so that you can then all work towards that same thing. But yeah. I know it's easier said than done, but it's definitely one of those things that you'll encounter regardless of wherever you are, if you're in an e-com operation.
Right. BJ or Katie, anything to add to this one here?
I love the aligned OKR concepts. I'm a big proponent of it. And you can have the best web and mobile app experience, but if you have a poor experience as a customer with fulfillment, whether that's it didn't arrive when I wanted it to, or I had to drive further than I expected to pick it up from a brick and mortar store, you remember that. And that's usually what's fresh on your mind if you're doing a review. So if organizations understand that customer journey doesn't finish digitally until the package is arrived and the product is being used that was delivered, I think that's critical. So aligning OKRs is a great concept.
Awesome. Katie, anything to add on this one?
No, I think they covered it great.
Okay. All right. Aligned OKRs. That's a good one. I love that. And getting there, I know is more challenging than it sounds, but this is some great advice. All right, I'm going to move to my next question here for you, BJ. The OMS product manager has to align multiple stakeholders, probably more than any other product role in the e-commerce, in the retail/grocery domain. Give us some best practices on how you do that. Like, an example would be, adding costs to store labor through curbside, while, you got one team that wants curbside, and then you've got another team that wants to drive down the cost to store labor. And those two things are diametrically opposed. Like, as a product manager, how do you align those different objectives?
Yeah, I think being a product manager in the order management space, probably, at least in my career, has required the most business acumen and business knowledge than any other position I've been in. When you're a front-end product manager, you typically focus on the user exclusively and driving conversion and sales. And so it's a bit cleaner. So for me, it's super important to really immerse yourself in the business itself, to be as knowledgeable about the business and the structure and the outcomes and objectives that they're trying to achieve, whether that's store operations, warehouse operations, or an e-commerce experience team that is really trying to manage the customer facing experience, including the physical aspect of that e-com. building really strong relationships with those individuals, maybe even leading them as a team, where you're making a multiple member team from their representative areas in the business, and sort of being the guide to help them see that their business strategies that they're trying to achieve are something that you as a technologist could really also help bring to life. It's not just delivery of the product, it's I can also be a business partner for you and help you achieve these. So certainly it depends on the organization and how the organization is structured, but the more you can get the various stakeholders and business partners together and be the leader of your space as one team with them, the better, in my opinion. Of course, it just can get very specific. It could be, having that one-on-one relationship and just being transparent about what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it sounds like what I'm hearing, if you're an OMS product manager, 20 to 40% of that role is just on that alignment building and relationship building across the organization. Is that a fair, did I put a good number on that?
Yes. And the value of it is tremendous. If you can get that collaboration going, you can get people to find common ground. When you're doing that demo, or you're talking about results, or you're sharing what's coming in the next quarter, you're going to find it is a whole lot easier than if you tried a bottoms up approach.
Yeah. Okay. Katie or Div, you want to add anything on this one?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything BJ said, is that in this space, helping bring together different business partners to understand perspectives and also driving them to bring their data to the table too, right? A lot of times when we have different business partners together, there's a lot of emotion that comes with perspective. And so getting those folks to bring their data to the table to help support their side of the conversation. The other piece I think is, as much as you can, and this is less something that you can do as a product manager, but if your company has, really well defined overarching objectives for the organization, trying to tie the initiatives back to those can be helpful to bring some of the business partners along that may not see they may not be perfectly benefited from this operation or this change, but it supports an overarching goal for the organization. That can be really helpful too.
Okay, awesome. Div, anything to add to that one?
No, they did perfectly. I think, the only other thing I would add is, and this kind of like just ties in, is having a really strong executive sponsor against the project that can help kind of rally the troops when things start to go haywire. And if you have that buy-in and alignment, and it all comes with relationship, and of course the storytelling skills to really be able to show what benefits whom and speak to the audience that you're speaking to, coupled with everything that Katie and BJ said.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna bring in an audience question here, and this is a great one. What would this is from Arcana Mana? What would be the first actions you would take to fix a failing roadmap? You drop into an organization that's got a roadmap that's a train wreck. What's the first thing you do?
I want to know why it's failing.
My answer
I
too.
think
Okay,
it kind
all
of
right.
depends on what we're saying a failing roadmap is. If it's that, you have a set of features that, are just continuing to drag on that you can't get live, potentially the solution is let's focus on one thing first and let's get really clear understanding of what the use cases are and what we're driving towards, and incrementally, step after those things. Trying to tackle a whole roadmap that feels like it's failing all at once is probably too big of a task to bite off. So my first recommendation would be like, take a look at everything that's on that list and really try to be diligent about prioritizing and focusing the team's time and attention on those 1 or 2 or 3 things that are at the top of the list. And I think once you can get a couple things across the line that start to provide value and bring people along, the rest of the roadmap will hopefully kind of fall into place behind that. That would be my gut reaction to it.
Okay. BJ, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I immediately thought of something a wise man named Sriram said to me one time, get some wins. So if you have a failing roadmap, or the team's delivery or whatever is going on is not working, and you need time to figure out how you can plan better and how you can build a roadmap that's more trustworthy and reliable, find things quickly that you can deliver that are wins and build that momentum. That way you get the momentum of the team going and give yourself some time to really assess the situation, like Katie was saying, and figure out where are our failure points.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right, I'm going to shift gears. And Katie, this question's for you. How to bring how do you bring the engineering team back to the business case? And sometimes it seems like they can be left out of the understanding of what they're impacting. And as a product manager, what is your role in bringing the engineering team along on that journey?
Yeah, this one's critical to me. I think from a best practices perspective, culture is just as important as any other best practice that you can put in place. And part of that culture is helping people understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so it's really important as you're having concept sprints, as you're starting to bring new initiatives to the team, that they really understand the value of the work that they're doing, helping bring them along in the journey from a customer perspective so that they can ask questions. I always find your engineers can poke holes in the process and the things that you're trying to design almost better than anybody else can. So giving them that opportunity to have a voice in the conversation really at the beginning of the process can oftentimes prevent you from running into issues further downstream. And so those are kind of some of the things that I think are really critical to bringing the team along and making sure that they understand why they're doing the work that they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Div, BJ, any perspectives on that one?
Totally aligned with what Katie said. I think, one of the things that we used to do very tactically was these town halls on a regular basis. So think about it like a company all hands, but within your own product, where you celebrated wins, talked about what's coming next, talked about business value and where their piece fits in the larger scheme of things, which I think really helps motivate. And outside of that, just being able to bring them in earlier in the funnel, to the point that Katie made, really helps like understand what measurement strategies are going to be, what data we could potentially use. It just like brings a lot of wins to the table, even through the project and after.
Yeah. Okay. DJ, anything else from you on that?
Just one maybe more tactical thing. I think it's important to bring in the scale and the growth plans that you envision the product will help achieve someday. So it might be 5 years down the road, but today you might be doing a specific sort of tier of order fulfillment in your business, but the executive team has plans for tripling that growth over the next 5 years or something like that. So when you get a chance to talk to engineers about the throughput that's going to need to be there in the future and the scale, and even some of the machine learning and science that might be in play at that point to be really smart with the business, that gives something very like tangible for everybody to start to work on and plan for.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. I see we've got a question that's been dropped in on AI ML, of course. And we actually had one teed up for our panelists as well. So I'm going to shift to that question now. Div, in thinking about all the things going on in the OMS domain with AI ML, from a product management perspective, just talk to us about how you're thinking about that right now.
I think the first piece of this whole thing is really anchoring on the use cases and trying to understand what are the problems you're trying to solve. Then step two, and bringing your stakeholders along the journey on this, right? And then step two is, do you even have the data to be able to solve this problem? And is it in a place that is accessible? Step three is like, what are the KPIs you're going to measure against this? Do you have a measurement methodology? Do you have the right team and resourcing to be able to do this? Are you going to go with a SaaS solution? Even if you are, do you have analytics resources in place that can help with some of this measurement and analytics around it? So there's just starting with that really robust use case and understanding the data and KPIs, I think is step one of like really assessing the capability of your organization to go into something more advanced like an AI ML algorithm. And then understanding where you're going to go for it. Are there players in the market? What are you going to be measuring? Starting iteratively also, and making sure you're doing POCs to be able to understand, is this really just a concept in my head, or is this something that is, actually going to drive value for the company?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I heard a whole lot of underlying enablers there that need to be in place before you start to think about AI and ML. Katie and BJ, you have anything you want to add to that list?
BJ, you can go first if you want.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I agree 1000%. You got to start with problems before a solution. Be very clear on that and the outcomes that you want solving that problem to achieve. It is very exciting to think about, though, what could be when you really are working on a product that is focused on productivity, efficiency, and reducing cost to serve, that you could see the business trajectory go north and maybe the percentage of cost of sales stay flat or even shrink through machine learning and AI. So it's exciting. I agree, experimenting now is a good way to start and being very clear on the problems that need to be solved.
Yeah. Okay. Katie, anything to add there?
I think they covered a lot of it. The only thing I would add is just acknowledging where your organization is in terms of, again, their appetite. The current place that I'm at, we're very much in still the basics of, to Div's point, let's understand our existing use cases. Let's understand our existing technology. Let's start with baby steps. Trying to take a giant leap to something that the business thinks sounds great without necessarily understanding where you are today is probably not the right move. So really getting clear documentation on current state and having measurements for your baseline that you're working against is really important.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Div, I'm going to go back to you for this next question as well. This is just about team. So if you were to hire a team in this domain, OMS product management team, what would be the key resources that you would want on the team?
Do you mean in product specifically?
Yeah. Yep.
It's a large domain, and I think it works different ways depending on the business and the nuances and like what they're trying to achieve. But like I would think that some places do it well when they do it based on stages. So order capture, inventory, kind of the purchase path, and then fulfillment returns, routing, etc. But then I've also seen situations where they do it more a little bit outcome based. So it's a little bit like, okay, order tracking accuracy, inventory accuracy. And more around like, what are we optimizing for? I think in the perfect team has a good mix of product managers who understand the post-purchase funnel completely, but then also very data-driven, sort of optimization-driven product managers that understand where there can be opportunities for either cost savings or other efficiencies within the entire process. So having a good mix there, and then after that, it just really business and how they would want it.
And if in the product teams that you've run, Div, or BJ, Katie, has the actual analytics component, the roles live in the product team, or is that in some central analytics team that you tap into? Can you talk about that?
I kind of call it the four-legged stool. I mean, we've heard the three-legged stool where it's product business engineering, but add in analytics there. Mostly we've seen them as central functions, but at the same time, like having an analytics resource clearly aligned to a product is super helpful because they can be in the metrics right from the beginning, in the data, and truly understand like some of those problems and optimizations.
Okay. BJ, Katie, anything to add there on team structure and
one role and depending on the size of the organization, you may not have this practice or not, but is a industrial engineering or process engineering team that does traditional analysis of step-by-step processes. So I think having even some candidates potentially that want to do a career switch from that type of role where they're focused on finding savings in processes from manufacturing or store operations, they actually make quite good product managers in the OMS space because there's a lot of overlap. They may not be traditionally a product manager, so you may have to like train them up on the best practices in product management, but they often come with the right mindset and love for the problem that they're trying to solve.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to something else you and I were talking about, BJ, around the whole, some organizations have this big group called process engineering, process improvement, and they're typically in the back end looking at order to cash lifecycle processes. Like, how does the product manager, typically an organization that function will be more mature than the OMS product management function.
Right.
So how do you kind of how do you work with that team that's had, probably thinks that they own a lot of those decision rights? And when you're trying to grow an OMS product team with an existing team like that, any advice for people there?
I mean, they're definitely a group that you want inside of your sphere in your product. You want to be super transparent with them about what you're trying to achieve with your product, what outcomes you're trying to drive. So they're a really, really good strategic partner to have. And they are a gift to you. You have to look at it as they're creating a great amount of user research and studies that you can harvest and bring into your product roadmap. So I think in terms of how you function with them, it's important to actually have that conversation and get an understanding of their timelines for their processes. Like, how long does it take them to do these studies? What does an output look like when they're finished with their study of time study or whatever? What do they have to do with that? Like, what's the end game or goal that they have to call it done? Because sometimes we've got to take budget out of the operations from store by the end of next year. Okay, well, that's going to impact my roadmap if I have to support you in doing so. So I think in an ideal scenario, they're almost really close members of the team, and you work very collaboratively with them.
Yeah. Okay. Katie, anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah, I think they can be your biggest ally. I was laughing to myself because I think BJ just described my career path. But I really do think that those teams can be, the backbone to helping you understand what's happening in the business from a process perspective, helping you drive some of the measurement that you want to get in order to support the changes that you're making. They generally see things on a day-to-day basis that you may not see in your role. And so I think that they can be a huge ally. I also think that it's important, as we talk about building out a team under OMS, is that those folks are so incredibly collaborative and they work so tightly together because they may own different components of the order process, but in the end, one can't work without the other. And so for my teams, always just making sure those folks are staying really tightly connected, that they understand the projects that each other's working on and can almost step in and be that secondary resource if needed in another space, can really help the team move forward.
Yeah, great advice. I'm going to take a question from the audience. What are some best practices for using the OMS to drive revenue margin growth instead of just reducing cost to serve? And as we see, the OMS is playing more a role in that lately, but what are you guys currently working on, or have you been working on that is more on the revenue margin side that you would want to share?
I can go first. I have something specific in mind. It really comes down to where you are in your e-com journey and what your current state is in fulfillment. So if you can find opportunities where your operations and your product are not at scale, maybe they're more personal shopping. Like so many retailers jumped into store fulfillment, for example, and just fill customer orders. There's an easy opportunity there to look at, well, how might we scale this operation and pick, pack, and ship in a more efficient manner. So that not only solves that immediate problem of taking all of the orders that you have to fulfill and being more efficient with them today, but you can also look at it as a way to continue to widen the margin between the sales and the cost to serve. So having a good study of your current operation, looking for ways where it's very inefficient and you could save time, again, not only solve current, but could set you up for growth in the future. And then you can go back to the business and say, hey, we just did this saved this much time. Now, this also allows the more orders you put into our funnel will just continue to widen exponentially. And we should continue to see more margin from that.
Yeah. Okay. So efficiency as a enabler to revenue growth. Yeah. That's awesome. BJ, or I'm sorry, Katie, any good revenue margin ideas on your side you guys are looking at?
Yeah, I always like to say, one of our goals as an order management platform is to meet the customer where they want, how they want, with what they want. And so the more that you're able to provide flexibility in fulfillment methods and inventory availability, the more that you can help drive that revenue because you're getting the customer, the product that they want in the location and how they want to receive it. And so I think the flexibility in fulfillment methods and availability is a huge opportunity to help drive some additional revenue for the business.
Cool. Div, any ideas from you?
I'll add on to what Katie said around inventory, because I think inventory positioning and optimizing where you're putting your inventory on the site, and even tying that journey together can lead to more clicks and conversion too. So really understanding the inventory data and what opportunities you have there, and you can add in like fulfillment data there, but being able to even influence what the shopping path looks like based on your inventory positions can help drive revenue.
Yeah. And this is something you were saying earlier in that discussion around, hey, we want to enable, for example, a filter option on the site that says, show me what's at my local store today, right? Who gets to make the decision on, yep, we're ready to do that from an accuracy, execution? Is that the OMS product manager that gets to that should make that decision, or is it someone else that has the ultimate decision rights on that particular one? Because it's a very tough question, right? Everyone wants inventory data up the shopping funnel, but many times it's just not ready it's not ready for prime time. Any advice on that?
Yeah, I don't know that the decision rights lie with one person. I think it's a data exercise to understand, one, what is your accuracy, to what kind of revenue can it drive? Should you add that, or is it more a detractor from, for your customer where, they're always seeing out of stock pages maybe. And so how do you optimize that experience? I think it's a collaboration between both e-com as well as the inventory product manager. In this case, I would definitely recommend having a product manager that, directly on the inventory product so that it can be something that they can optimize for. And there are many ways to add thresholds and do things where you can, not necessarily always show the number, but have a more intelligent approach there.
Right. And that was another question we were going to discuss on, so I'll go there now. So you feel that the inventory domain should be a specific product separate from the OMS product?
I've seen that work very well across both organizations that I've worked for before and in talking to other peers and colleagues.
Mhm. Okay. And just make the case for me why why you feel that way.
I think there's a lot of logic that goes into inventory. It's not just about counting supply and demand, but then you can add in so much logic within that to say, I want to customize my inventory for X use case. And based on that, you can really optimize both the revenue funnel as well as the order fulfillment decisions. And you can, provide configurations to your business users and add some intelligence to your ATP decisions, essentially. I think that's definitely not something that we should lump in now into the OMS space. I think it requires dedicated time, space, and analytics to really understand how to optimize your inventory.
Okay. Katie, BJ, do you guys agree with that perspective?
I do.
Yeah, I do. Partially because Div and I were partners on it at Gap, so it worked pretty well when we did it there. But I do think the big point that Div had around the analytics that can go into optimizing your inventory is a really unique capability that you absolutely can have a whole team of folks focused on, to drive results.
Okay. All right. BJ, next question's for you. So the question is, what must be true for a product in the fulfillment order management portfolio to succeed? So what underlying data, services, etc., are needed to have a product be successful in this domain?
Yeah, we just talked about inventory. Obviously, that's an obvious one. It as a product leader in the order management space, you're a recipient of, you're a customer of other people's products and the processes and services they're providing. Inventory is an obvious one. You have to have real-time accurate inventory and a feed providing that to your product to really be efficient and grow. I also think on the capacity side of things, it's important to have the right services set up for you to consume, to have a better understanding of the capacity at whatever fulfillment node that you're planning to route your order to, and also just to learn where it's more efficient to route orders if you have multiple warehouses or distribution centers that you're fulfilling from. And if you're doing store fulfillment, it makes it even more complex. And if you want to get into things like hub fulfillment or order merge, you need to understand that capacity at all the different nodes across your fleet in order to route orders in the most efficient manner. And you may be routing items, not just orders, but single items from an order, depending on what your basket looks like as a retailer. So I think what you bring in from a data perspective, like inventory stats and data, and then your capacity fulfillment, you have to have well-defined system there that's providing that service.
Okay, great. I'm going to take another audience question, interesting one around feature adoption. So does the OMS product manager have a role in the feature adoption of something that you implemented? So as product manager, you implement feature A, and it requires some sort of adoption by the user, change management aspect. Like, does the OMS product manager own that, or is that someone else that should own that? What have you guys seen related to that? Katie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a product manager, you are ultimately should feel ownership towards the full success of the rollout of the feature or capability. So while you have lots of supporting folks that help you get there, there should absolutely be a level of ownership in terms of change management and adoption, and understanding if there isn't adoption, why, and potentially helping prioritize individual features or changes to that capability that help drive ultimately the adoption. I've been in organizations that have really strong change management functions that can definitely help and support you if they exist, but also in organizations that haven't had as strong of a change team, in which case I think the product manager takes, a heavy weight of that functionality or that role.
Okay. Interesting. So you feel the product manager directly owns the user adoption, change management, whatever that curve is going to be for the impacted user, they own that.
In a world where there isn't change management in the organization,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Div or BJ, you guys have perspectives on that?
I completely agree. In fact, that's one of the KPIs that I think every product manager should be tracking, because I mean, in a perfect world, in a non-OMS world, if you're not getting adoption on your product, there's likely something that you need to do to that product to make it better. So really understanding the user and being able to track that adoption is super helpful. And then of course it helps inform your roadmap, but then also it helps teach you to tell the story. One of the things that, you know, a very strong change management partner said was always start with who's your audience and what's in it for them. And then being able to actually do that makes you a stronger product manager overall.
Mm-hmm. What you mentioned a KPI around user adoption. What is the specific KPI that you use?
Depends on the system, but we definitely look at, you know, how many times a particular, suppose it's an analytic, how many times it was adopted versus it was overridden, or if it was a configuration, you know, things like that. But within our UIs, I think it depends on the system on how you would track that adoption.
Yeah. Okay. BJ, anything to add here?
This is an area where I like to think of the OMS product as a commercialized product that I might be selling to others in the world, similar to what some big retailers are starting to do. So I like to think of Net Promoter Score and product market fit questions, because not only does it make your immediate life easy if you're rolling out a change and trying to drive adoption as quickly as possible, it also sort of gives you in the mindset of like, what else could we do differently to really make this intuitive and simple to understand, so we don't have to do a heavy lift to get adoption going out there.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go back to the kind of the discussion around ownership. There's a question that came in around the end-to-end customer experience and who actually does it. What I think you guys are going to say is that nobody owns it, everyone owns it. It's my guess. But that's the question should there be someone that is handling that gets to be the arbiter of these tough decisions, or should that be left to the teams to sort out together?
I can kick it off. I
Yeah.
really hold the brand that you work for to the highest esteemed level possible. So it's super important to make sure that you have a really great brand experience happening for your customers. Usually in those circumstances, you have some form of a customer experience team or digital experience team that's focused on that end-to-end, you know, top-notch level experience. Even when I worked for Sunglass Hut, you're spending over $100 on a pair of sunglasses. We wanted that box being open to like not just be the pair of sunglasses sitting in a brown box, but to actually be beautiful and think about what you're putting on. So it's important, I think, to have, hopefully you have individuals like that in the organization that are focused on your brand and your brand's equity and really elevating the brand equity.
Yeah.
That you can partner with.
Great. You guys want to add anything to that?
I agree. I think it's a function that we all collectively own in a way, but then it's important to have a dedicated team or leader that is looking at it end to end and can help break some of those decisions.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So an independent group that owns customer experience that can be the arbiter is what I'm hearing. Okay, cool. And then, so this other question related a little bit on going back to product and user adoption. The OMS is often not the space where UX is the first consideration in how products are designed. But how do you guys incorporate the user experience into your product decisions? You know, what are some best practices there around making sure it's a great UX? Katie?
Yeah. I think that, there's a couple ways. First, we say OMS is in the background, but OMS powers, generally speaking, your customer care organization. It powers all of your fulfillment in your stores. And so one of the things that I think is super important as a product manager is to get out into the field and actually experience some of that for yourself. Ultimately, going through the process with a customer care agent and understanding their day-to-day life and how what you're doing impacts them, the same in your stores, and understanding their fulfillment processes. That is super helpful to understand the user experience. The other side of it is then kind of more of the admin role, the folks that are using your UI to optimize for fulfillment or to provide different availability views. And from that perspective, I think it's just really close partnership and understanding the pain points that they have and helping try to build an environment and a work stream that's super simple and easy for them to use, which isn't easy because it's a really complex space, right? And the rule sets that you can build can become, incredibly complicated. So trying to simplify the experience is really important.
Yeah, great input. What, Div, any perspective on this one?
I think Katie nailed it. I am fortunate enough to have, our UX flow roll under products. So we definitely run everything by them. But I think staying really close to the stakeholders and the users that are going to be using it, and then continuously getting feedback from them too, to iterate on what you're doing. It can be something as silly as you give them a beautiful UI where, they're able to change configurations, but they have to do it one by one. And now they're doing like 9,000 configurations at a time. And you just have to give them a bulk upload capability. So I think it's just like really understanding those workflows and those processes to be able to define what that UX should look like.
Right. So you have a dedicated UX role on your product team. Is that
not dedicated to OMS, but definitely consultant? I feel lucky.
Yeah. Okay, great. BJ, any thoughts on this one?
I think it's good to think about your peak volume times when everyone's trying to find the status of an order, what's going on with this order, especially your customer care center, and have a UX or UI individual look at that experience and think about that moment for the users, as well as the ones in store who are, managing all that fulfillment. And also, I think a UX individual can also play a role with architects around information architecture and how that organization of flow of data might come to life, because they can help articulate why that's important to the user and why it needs to look certain ways.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right, we're at the top of the hour. I'll just pause for, is there anybody in the audience that wants to go off, wants to go live here and ask a question to the panelists? We'd be happy to take one question before we wrap. Anybody? Nobody.
Chap, there was a question by Binoj Verma that just came in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Let's see. Question: how does the OMS product team influence sourcing and fulfillment strategy? So that's I'm assuming that your teams in the OMS owned the OMS product and sourcing rules, maybe not. How do you guys view that particular domain within the OMS? Is that the supply chain that owns those rules? Katie, you want to go first on that one?
I'd say, yes, those are kind of critical components to the OMS strategy. I think from a business perspective, there's partnership both with the supply chain and the e-commerce teams as you're building out that strategy. But like we talked about earlier, it's really on the OMS product manager to help bring those groups together and make sure that there is a cohesive view on what your strategy is, both from a sourcing and a fulfillment perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Div, anything to add on that one?
Totally agree with what Katie said. I think it's the stakeholder management there on like bringing that cohesive strategy together.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, this has been an incredible panel. We are very lucky to have your voices here this morning. I hope everyone out there has gotten a lot out of this. I know I did. Extremely insightful comments. I'm going to make one plug before we wrap. Our next panel discussion in OMG is going to be around OMS holiday readiness best practices. So if you are passionate about that topic and you have a lot of war stories that you want to share, please contact me. We're interested in recruiting panelists for our next discussion. That's OMS holiday readiness. So Katie, Div, BJ, thank you so much for being here this morning and sharing your wise words on product management. It was fantastic. And thanks again.